Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, my fellow researchers and Simon, I'm honoured to be asked to speak at our penultimate conference of 2024, and I promise that I won't keep you all very long. I know some of you are anxious to make the journey home after a long weekend, while some, who shall remain nameless, will simply be anxious to make the journey back to the bar. As an old Irish proverb goes, the only thing worse than being kept from the bar is being sober when you get there. So in that spirit, I promise to keep this very brief. First, I want to take this opportunity to express my sincere appreciation to Neil Safety for organising yet another successful DPU conference. And also to Tony for all the technical assistance that he provides in these conferences as well. I'd also like to thank Bart for just turning up. This is my first time in Canterbury, and God willing, it certainly won't be my last. Many years ago, a member of the White House press asked President Kennedy if he had to do it over again, would he work for the presidency and would he recommend the job to others? Through a wry smile, he said, well, the answer is, the first is yes, and the second answer is no, I don't recommend the job to others. I get the feeling Neil feels the same about his secretarial duties here at Dealey Plaza. Secondly, to the researchers who have given up their time and shared their invaluable insights over these past few days. Your dedication to unearthing the facts surrounding the events of 1963 is crucial in keeping alive the eternal question of why John F. Kennedy was assassinated. Your work ensures that the next generation of Americans can better understand the grotesque tragedy of Dallas and why they still suffer from its fallout to this day. Finally, I would like to close this conference by reflecting on what the 35th President of the United States means to me. In reflecting on the life of John Fitzgerald Kennedy, it would be easy for me to stand here and focus on the grand achievements of his life. His heroism during World War II, his courageous speech on the floor of the United States Senate in favour of Algerian independence, his bold stand in confronting the religious prejudice which marred his campaign for the presidency, the creation of the Alliance for Progress, the Food for Peace programme, and the Peace Corps, which all embodied his vision of a better, more just world. Then there is the remarkable display of leadership in facing crisis. He's taken full responsibility for the Bay of Pigs debacle, even though he inherited the doomed operation. His confrontation with the steel companies, his defence of West Berlin by proclaiming to their citizens that he stood as one of them, his handling of the Cuban Missile Crisis, his call for space exploration, his stunning words in support of civil rights, rights enshrined in the Constitution's promise that all men are created equal, the passing of the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty and his various speeches that rang out for freedom across the globe. These moments of triumph are etched into the history of a nation. But there is something deeper that should not be lost amongst these moments of history. The simple truth is that his immeasurable courage, his deep compassion, and his steadfast ideals were not merely political, they were profoundly human. Jack Kennedy did not stand apart from the struggles of ordinary people. He was one of them. Like any of us, he was not free from sin or imperfection, and he never claimed to be. But by battling immense physical pain throughout his life, he became a symbol of resilience. Robert Kennedy once wrote of his brother that at least one half of the days that he spent on this earth were days of intense physical pain. He had scarlet fever when he was very young, and serious back trouble when he was older. In between, he had almost every other conceivable ailment. When we were growing up together, we used to laugh about the great risk a mosquito took in biting Jack Kennedy. With some of his blood, the mosquito was almost sure to die. But I never heard him complain. I never heard him say anything which would indicate that he felt that God had dealt with him unjustly. Those of us who knew him well, we knew he was suffering only because his face was a little whiter, the lines around his eyes a little deeper, and his words a little sharper. He liked to quote Lord Tweedsmuir, one of his favourite authors, that politics is still the greatest and most honourable adventure. And in his dedication to serve others, he demonstrated that public life, at its best, is about service to humanity. This is why he continues to inspire me today. President Kennedy once described himself as an idealist without illusions. He understood that the road to progress would be difficult, that the fight for freedom would be fraught with challenges. But he also knew that in each of us lies the capacity to change the world around us. He believed that one person can make a difference, and we all should try. Peter Salinger once wrote that Jack loved people and did not view the world and its problems in an abstract way. The campesino in Latin America, the American boy dying in Vietnam, the small boy starving to death in an Indian village. The child born with learning difficulties were not just statistics to him. They were people to be helped, to be loved, and not to be forgotten. It was this same compassion that led him to write to the mother of a severely burned child he saw while running through the corridors of a Boston hospital to be at the side of his ailing son Patrick. At that moment of deep personal grief, he still found it in his heart to comfort another family, writing to the child's mother simply, "Keep up your courage, John F. Kennedy." Hours later, this same man would be standing in the boiler room of a Boston hospital with tears streaming down his face, inconsolable after the death of his son. It was this same compassion, this deep care for all children, that fueled his broader concerns about the future. In a letter to his friend Robert Kennedy, imploring him to seek the presidency in 1968, Pete Hamill conveyed to Bobby that "I wanted to remind you, in Watts, I didn't see pictures of Malcolm X or Ron Karenga on the walls. I saw pictures of JFK. It is your obligation in staying true to whatever it was that put those pictures on those walls." So as we gather here, as researchers, historians, and admirers, we are not merely looking back at what John F. Kennedy achieved over 60 years ago. We are the torchbearers of his legacy, looking forward to what we can accomplish for the next generation today. And as we continue to unearth the facts of his death, to tell the story of his life, and to honour a man who stood for something greater than himself, we carry forth the torch of his vision, a vision of a world not yet realised, but still worth fighting for. John Buchanan once wrote, John Buchan once wrote, "He will stand to those of us left as an incarnation of the spirit of the land that he loved." And so he does. He stands as a testament to courage, to conviction, and to compassion. But more than that, he stands as a challenge to each of us to live by the same principles, to show the same courage, and to continue the work of building a better world. John Kennedy knew that there is a God, and he could see a storm coming. "If he has a place for me," he once wrote, "I believe that I am ready." But the world was not. When Walter Cronkite announced his death, the nation went into shock and was paralysed by grief. As Ted Sorensen once wrote, "They wept on the streets of Moscow, they prayed in the villages of Asia, they brought candles to the wall in West Berlin." And those of us who knew him and served and loved him felt, as the Irish felt on the death of Owen Roe O'Neill, that we were lost and alone. We felt that the brightness had fallen from the sky. And when I think of President Kennedy, I think of what Tennyson once wrote about grief. "And the stately ships go on to their haven under the hill, but oh for the touch of a vanished hand and the sound of a voice that is still." Ladies and gentlemen, let us not remember him as a figure lost to time, but as a voice calling us to service, to carry forward the fight for a brighter, more just future, a call still echoing, still alive, and and still within our reach. Thank you very much.
Well, follow that. Just going to have a couple of minutes with you guys. I think it's been an absolutely fantastic seminar. In terms of the variation of subject matter and the quality of speakers and the effort and research that we put into these, and I'm just absolutely gobsmacked at how good it's been this year. I want to thank you, Tony. I mean, you're a deputy, and Robert as well. I mean, it's difficult to come up and speak here, and I think you did a really good job. What else was I going to say? Yeah, with respect to Tony, unfortunately, only half of his first session was recorded. So what I'd like to do is have Tony on a Zoom cast, because I think the quality of that research was outstanding. Mary Havstick, we were talking about as a potential Zoomcast presenter in December or the end of November, but she's extremely busy and she hasn't come back to me, so she's not been particularly responsive. So maybe November or December we could do that. If she does come back, then maybe we just push you back to January. But I think the wider DP UK group should listen to this insight that you've had, quite frankly. And as I say, it's a shame that we lost half the recording. I hope the first time attendees enjoyed yourselves. Dave? And just a note in terms of the future, I mean, obviously I'll be lining up a Zoomcast programme again for 2025, but I just don't think I can do 2 of these per year. I think it's a lot of work, and I think it would be better to have one session in June next year in the middle of England for 2.5 or 3 days. So make a bigger event that you know that you can budget for just one event. These are expensive for you. I do appreciate that. There's a lot of travel. We've had people come down from Scotland, people from America. So from next year, it'll either be June 14th or 15th, or June 28th, 29th, and it will be Oxford or Nottingham or a country hotel or something like that. I'll do some research on it, and it'll be accessible by train as well as obviously by car. And I think we'll do a much bigger event, if you like, with an extra half a day or an extra day. I mean, we've got a lot of speakers lined up. I also know that there are people here this weekend who are keen to present for the first time next year. So that's great. Simon's talking about this, James Gay is talking about this. We need that. We need more domestic speakers. Yeah, I mean, I might do something as well, actually. Yeah, I know. If I could ever do some research. Yeah, rather than chasing up course orders. But that's not directed to you. So that's what I intend to do next year. But I wanted to forewarn you because if we can get a commitment, then I know what numbers I'm dealing with. When I negotiate with a hotel and so forth. One final thing: there are some spare copies of the programme. If you've got buddies that didn't come, that might want an extra copy, please do so. And that's it, guys.
Thank you.